yeah, have a great day or evening or whatever it is for you. Thanks for joining. Okay. Is this still recording? Is this recording? It's recording 22 minutes. Perfect. Okay. All right. Welcome. Welcome everyone. Hi. Welcome to this video. This is part 2 of, I'm not sure how long this series is going to be on the archetypes. It's probably going to be 100 videos. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. We ended the last video, part 1. If you haven't seen it, you should probably watch it. We've ended the last video with, by noting that there are essentially 2 aspects of an archetype, right? There are the ways in which we interact with them, or we see them, or we conceptualize them, or we talk about them, and then there is what they are. And the latter is sort of a metaphysical category, so it's a bit more difficult to talk about, especially with Jung, who doesn't like doesn't like to admit that he likes metaphysics. We're talking for him here, bless him. So we ended it with a quote where Jung essentially, I'm quoting from, for all those that didn't watch, I'm quoting from Jung's collected volume, C.G. Jung edition, German version, Die Archetypen und das kollektive Unbewusste, The Archetypes and Collective Unconscious, Volume 9, Part 1. So, page 43, a quote I ended with last time where Jung says, look, the archetypes, there's nothing historic, there's no view or idea that is not historic or that is not historically precedented or preceded. All of them are grounded in archetypal forms or Urformen, the view of which or Anschaulichkeit of which emerged or are grounded in a time or emerged in a time where consciousness did not think but perceive. So I think to start this video again, let's differentiate between, let's note that essentially if we speak about thinking, or if we speak about if we speak in general, we're always arguing from the perspective of the ego. So I cannot argue, I can't even really talk about an unconscious. I cannot talk collective unconscious. It doesn't work because it's fundamentally different from talking or the way the ego functions. And this pertains also to the idea that we can return to a state, a state of collective unconscious, so long as we are bound to the ego. And again, this is a critique of, let's say, the modern use of drugs or meditative states or trance states, but especially drugs, because I like to critique it. It's impossible to dissolve the ego and then talk about what you experienced while dissolving the ego, and then claim that what you're just telling is true from the standpoint that is non-ego, because you're speaking from the ego. Okay, so you couldn't speak if you're not ego, because that's what the ego does. It creates language. It enables us to interact in a society. And I know, like, modern pop culture, this is of course Jung perspective, right? And Freud, I would say. Although I'm not an expert in Freud, I'm not claiming. But for Jung, like, the ego enables us to live in it or exist in a social conglomerate. And you can have a less or more or less strong, let's say, boundaries or firm sort of protective walls of the egos. That's true. Your ego can be weakly protected, but you can't not have ego. And as long as you have ego, you cannot speak directly, or you cannot experience directly, first of all, personal unconscious and especially not collective unconscious. Like you cannot directly experience an archetype. It just doesn't, you can't speak it, you can't access it. Jung says it explicitly everywhere. And it just also doesn't make sense. Then what's the point, of differentiating these realms? So what's important to note is that all these fantasies of returning to a world where we live in, let's say, sort of this, what Jung calls primitive state, at quotation marks, because it's not accepted to say that anymore, but what he actually means is a state where the ego had not emerged from the unconscious, because for Jung, again, I'll repeat it, I said last time, the Jung emerges from the unconscious to, the ego emerges from the unconscious to become ego. And so there's a state where, and you see it in infants, like infants are, if you ever had an infant or child, if you ever watched a child, well, I don't know if you can see it on first watch, but if you ever saw a child grow up from being born, and then, I don't know, my daughter's one and a bit, almost 2, 1.5, that kind of thing. And you see this change, right? When they're born, they're not there. I mean, they're there, but they're not conscious at all. You can tell. And then with every day they become more conscious. And it's strange to watch, because in the beginning they don't notice anything. Like they don't like day 1, day 2, day 3, you can do this, you can play, you can make sounds, like they don't really notice. They don't. Very soon they'll start noticing sounds and movements close to them. Of course they feel the love and everything, and especially the milk. They love the milk and everything. So that's and the love and the body contact, but they're not conscious. Like that's not, they're impulsive, right? And again, like Jung emphasizes this, that this realm of the unconscious is defined by impulsiveness, reaction, and so on. So that's what they are, instincts. And so this is a state where you could say they have, well, we can suspect they have unity with the collective unconscious. But the thing is, how do we know? We know from a perspective of the ego. Like, so we don't know. We're looking at them and we're idealizing and saying, oh, this must be what it's like to just be in, indulging in this womb, you great mother, like kind of thing. But we don't know. And that's, I think, I want us to be cautious and critical of what we're reflecting on. The way we're talking about this is all structured by the ego. And sure, we have the dreams and we have the experiences when the ego is dissolved, like when you have a psychedelic trip, you have the experiences, you can read it, you can remember it. But this memory is subjugating the experience. So we don't know what it is directly because we couldn't talk about it. We want to be critical here with ourselves. So I want to be critical. But again, like then we already see here in this also, again, like these two aspects of the archetypes. So on the one hand, they're, as I said, there are these inflictions on the ego, and these they have these effects, right, on the ego, and that are experienced and that are talked about, and that we can sort of see, and that are the aftermaths and the interpretation and the symbols. And then there is what the archetypes are themselves, giving shape. Like Jung says here, page 56, they give shape to everything that there is in consciousness, which for some means that they give shape to everything there is in reality. Some figures. Reality including material reality. And this can mean that, again, for some, it means that it means that because everything then we perceive is perceived on the level of consciousness, that reality is imbued with consciousness, let's say, or an idealist position. Okay, let us continue here. There is something I wanted to share here. Okay, so one important thing to notice is that the archetypes are not this page 81. The archetypes are not inherited images. Like you don't inherit symbol. You know, it's not like you wake up and it's like, oh yeah, the sun, you know, it's like so, but it's a possibility for imaginations, or a possibility for images, a possibility for to experience. If you experience, you will experience in these terms, let's say, these kinds of things. But it's not like, but genes are that way, right? I mean, to some extent, you know, a gene doesn't have to express, right? It could stay unexpressed. I don't know, maybe, but Jung doesn't think, and this is also important, archetypes, although Jung draws this similarity, archetypes, as I see it in Jung, are not like genes. They're not passed on from individual to individual, but as consciousness, again, or as humans with a psyche, you're born and open into this space. That is the second aspect. That's not the interpreting aspect, right? But the second aspect, this forming aspect or shaping aspect. It's sort of this fabric of reality that you're born into that you cannot access with your ego, that we can talk about a lot and we can speculate. We can say, oh, it's like, it's an energy, it's a life force. Well, I don't know. I don't think it's a life force. I don't know if it cares. Life force sounds so intentional, so I'm not sure. But it's you know, it's like if you're born with, let's say, let's use terms that are interesting. Like if you're born with a soul, your soul sort of incarnates in your body, then that gives you the ability to, well, that gives you the sort of link, let's say. Link is a modern term. Anyways, it gives you a link, it connects you to this macrocosmic structure that's behind the way that the consciousness that develops out of the soul can unfold. And I mean soul in a way that it's spirit, you know, spirit that makes us human, let's say. In a divine sense, I don't know, but let's maybe, it's what we would say psyche is, right? Brain, you could say the brain, if you want to be materialist, the brain. And Jung says this results in a contradiction, right? You have on the one hand this empirical element of the archetypes, as page 85, empirical element of the archetypes, which appears as a type, you know, like the Anima, it's a type, or the archetype of the fool, it's a type. But on the other hand, you have just this, it's simply structuring, you know, it's simply trajectories. There's nothing typed to it, there's nothing determined. There's not like, but it's more of a, it channels, if you will, unfolding in a certain direction. So this is what I wanted to say, and it's the way it, again, like I said, that the archetypes can act as this inflection point, and Jung gives here this example of Nietzsche when he wrote Zarathustra, page 21, when he wrote Zarathustra, that it was this, you know, Nietzsche repressed the certain, he repressed something in the personal unconscious, right? A certain relationship to Christianity, Jung says. And then that came back or returned in the form of Zarathustra, which you may then say, oh, this is then personal unconscious because repression then returned. But the archetype, this archetype of the, you know, Christian savior figure, Christ, you know, Zarathustra being a figure, Christ-like figure, so it amplified this explosion. It made this grandiosity possible, let's say, the grandiosity that Zarathustra, just somewhere on his bookshelf, is, right? So the archetype can then also interact, as you see, with on the level of the personal unconscious. Yeah. So, okay, that's it. In the next video, I'll talk about the more about the effects of this rupture, and sort of this topic that we can always only see the aftermath and integrate, and what the ego does in the aftermath of such ruptures, and the dangers also of it, one of them being psychosis. Thanks for joining, and enjoy your day or evening or whatever it may be.